bit life-threatening, some serious head injuries, bleeding around the brain, inside the brain, broken bones, things like that.
Sanford Hospital says it's seeing an increase in patients visiting the ER with serious injuries from domestic violence. On top of that, there's been an 18% increase in 911 calls in the Valley for domestic situations. Valley News Team's Joshua Pagero talks to those on the front lines who say the pandemic may have made things worse.
Sanford doctors and nurses are on the front lines of saving lives and fighting off the coronavirus pandemic. But another thing on their plate is an increase in people stopping by the emergency room with serious injuries.
We're seeing a doubling of stabbings and overall assaults where people are just beating on each other, that sort of thing. And disturbingly, we're also seeing a doubling, a little bit more than doubling of pediatric child abuse cases.
Dr. Jeff Tiongson works in the ER, and he's treated some of these patients.
I have 5 kids of my own, and when you kind of think of these patients and they're around the same age as some of your kids, or you think back on that, it's literally impossible not to have that affect you in some way.
Law enforcement is immediately contacted when a child shows up with serious injuries. As the numbers double, Dr. Tiongson says it makes sense to him that being isolated in a home may be a reason for the increase. Numbers from Fargo police show an increase in calls for service compared to last year. Before it escalates that a victim of domestic violence has to visit an emergency room, there are other resources available in the Fargo-Moorhead area where they can get assistance. The YWCA, which has an emergency shelter, says women continue to call asking for help, and they continue to welcome women and kids. First Link has a call helpline, and they say they've taken more than 1,000 calls. They're reporting an increase of 500 people calling for suicide compared to last year. Chris Johnson of the Rape and Abuse Crisis Center in Fargo says his agency saw a decrease in the beginning of the outbreak.
Overall, our productivity, if you will, dropped about 20%, which is pretty alarming for us because, we have 43 years of pretty consistent programming data.
Johnson says things are starting to pick back up now.
There's a lot of risk for a victim to reach out to the system for help when they're in a domestic violence situation. And so a victim really has to weigh that risk.
He says domestic violence is a hard cycle to break, but it can be achieved with help. In Fargo, Joshua Pagero, Valley News Live.
If you need confidential help or support, you can call 211 24/7 for immediate service. Stay